got an exciting panel to start us out for a fun afternoon of programming. I'm going to get right to the chase, and I'm going to invite our panelists up for a panel entitled, Is it time to call winners and losers in the new gTLDs? So why don't we give a big round of applause to Tobias, Flaitz, and his panel.
So, good afternoon. I hope you enjoyed lunch, and you will enjoy this panel with great people about an interesting topic. As mentioned, is it time to call winners and losers in the new gTLD space? We can call winners and losers obviously about all kinds of stuff, but we're now talking about domain names, about TLDs. And these gentlemen and this lady here are representing different companies in context with the new gTLDs. So I'm starting with Leanne Hogben. She's Relations Manager for the .shop registry. She's out of Australia.
Yes.
But the .shop registry is GMO in Tokyo, Japan. So Gore, Global Sales Manager with InterNetX. He's representing the Registrar side of the business. Sandeep Ramchandani, representing a portfolio registry, Radix. One of their strengths is .online, another one .store, and many more. Then we have Jeff Sass, he's the CMO of .club. And we have Michael Ward, Business Development .eco. A round of applause, please, for the panelists. So, I'm doing it that I'm asking questions. And if you have questions, it's hard to see you because of the light. But if you have questions, please raise your hand or make a noise so that I can see that. If we have time enough, then we fill in. We have about 50 minutes, and we probably can wisely use it. So, talking about success or talking about calling winners and losers, what is your perspective on success of the new gTLDs? What is your key performance indicator in this case? Michael, you want to start?
I can start, but we haven't even launched yet, so I'm not sure if it would be appropriate for me to speak about .eco first, so maybe I'll pass it to you.
Well, maybe that's a good thing. You haven't started, but you have
launching.
Probably some kind of KPI that you have in mind.
We do.
Exactly.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. .eco was a community application. It was supported by 50 global community organizations, including WWF, David Suzuki Foundation, World Council on Sustainable Business Development. It's for the environmental community, which is a broad community including businesses, both large and small, individuals, nonprofit, environmental organizations, products, as well as government organizations. So for us, one of our KPIs will be we want to ensure that .eco becomes a global brand that facilitates trust and transparency for anybody and everybody who's involved with the environmental community. And to the extent that we can create that, that'll be one measure of success for us.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think for us, and I think for all of us really, the most important metric is usage. And I think one of the things that excites us at .club the most, it's not the top level number of registrations, but it's all the businesses and entrepreneurs and existing clubs that are using .club names and the publicity that they get. So it's very exciting. Recently there's Chaos.club, which is run by a very famous Victoria's Secret model, and they do very high-end, cool iPhone cases. And they've been written up in Vogue magazine, and they've been written up in publications in many countries all over the world. And every one of those write-ups mentions their website, chaos.club. So those kinds of things get exciting. And when companies are making products using a .club name, so these socks are from manbrands.club, and these condoms are from greencondom.club. And they recently upgraded their name, and they actually bought the premium name condom.club as well. So we get really excited by actual usage, and we have over 150,000 live active websites with real content, real businesses using .club, and that's what gets us the most excited.
Just one question right here. Isn't it all about finance at the end? I mean, if the numbers work, is that the KPI that you all have in your mind? Sandeep, go.
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, absolutely. I think sales definitely would define the eventual success or failure of a business, right? I think that's what we're all in business for. But usage actually is an important lead factor that would end up in sustainable revenue for the business, right? I think the industry has gotten into this race to sort of become the biggest TLD by number of domains. We've seen that happen. But I think that's really the wrong metric, because you have to look at the quality of the namespace rather than the quantity, right? And the reason you need to look at that is try and understand how many of those domain names are likely to be used and renewed. So I think usage is important because that is an important factor which would suggest renewal and long-term renewal for every domain name. So I think those aspects are very closely associated. The more you use the domain name, the more you publicize it in magazines and other media, the likelihood of you actually renewing it for the long term is higher. And that's what we're all after. We want customers who will buy the domain name but then end up using it for the long run. And we're all focused on trying to acquire that sort of a customer, than a customer who's just going to buy a domain name for cheap and flip it or use it for some speculative activity or for some nefarious reasons, which is something we've seen happen when you really drop the price very low for a domain name. So yeah, it's all about quality more than quantity, and that would really define the long-term feasibility of your business. So yeah, I think that's how we look at the potential success metric for our business.
Thank you. And I jump to Leanne because I have a different question for you. As you're not a registry. Leanne.
Yeah, we get really excited about usage as well. I think we're only 6 months old, so we don't have probably as many great examples as you guys do, but we're starting to see a lot of relevant usage, and we see eBay merchants and the Etsy merchants using .shop, and redirecting a .shop, and we think that's great, and bigger brands as well, and we think that's a really good start.
What's the total number of registrations so far?
Right now, 175,000.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Cool. From InterNetX or registrar perspective, I heard that very many registrars struggled in the beginning, but now they like the new gTLDs because every single registration with the new gTLDs is giving them more margin than with the others. Is that correct, or what you?
It's tough to say. It depends on the market, of course. Depends on the TLD in the local country. But at first, for us, it was kind of difficult. We had to take on a big project where we had to bring on, over 400 new different TLDs, and everyone was unsure how it was going to perform and what we were going to get out of it. So InterNetX, we did a really good job. We tried to onboard as many as we could at the beginning and participate in all the phases. And now we start seeing those numbers coming in. I think that is also due to usage, people seeing that those domains are being used out there. It's always, driving, you got to market to those end customers, which I think the registries are doing a really good job on, because there's attraction for these new TLDs. So for our customers, we do see more and more registrations coming in, which definitely leaves a better margin for the registrar, because some of them may be more expensive than a .com or a .de domain, which is relatively cheap. But when you're looking at the new TLDs, some range from a couple dollars to all the way a couple $1,000 per registration. So there's a lot more margin to be made, and I think the registries or the registrars, it's a good business now.
How difficult is it to get shelf space on the consumer end, so that customers that you're all seeking for, really getting to find a name under the new gTLD that you're representing? How difficult is it to get in there at the registrar front end or other things? I mean, how do you get the usage that you were claiming is so important? How do you get there?
So I can take that question. So that actually is the toughest challenge that you face from a channel partnership perspective, right? Because there are so many TLDs out there, right? There are hundreds of them, and the shelf space is limited to maybe 10, maximum 20, right? So how do you ensure that you work out a cooperative partnership agreement with the registrar to ensure that he showcases your TLD above all else? I think what really matters at that point is the quality of the extension, because the registrar will always prioritize the TLD that will make him the most money, right? And it's up to you as a registry to justify that your TLD will make him more margin than the next TLD. And I think that's really the kind of discussion that we have. There's several other aspects to it as well, like you try and make the partnership with the registrar more strategic. There's stuff like co-marketing partnerships where we spend marketing dollars jointly in promoting domains in general. And a few other things that we do, like out here we partner with several registrars in terms of sponsoring their booth activity and having some branding there and so on. So it's, I think, proving to him that your TLD is worth that spot in the shell space, and trying to strike a more strategic alliance with the registrar that will go a long way. So I think those two factors play a very, very big role.
I think also, pricing structure has a lot to do with it. In this environment here, we're at WHD, the Cloud Festival. It's a hosting conference. In the hosting world, so we have traditional registrars, but we also want the hosting companies to offer our extensions as well. And there, it's a different situation. I think the usage is very important to hosting companies, because if people are looking at these domains to actually use them for their businesses, then they need email, they need hosting, they need all the added value services that hosting providers offer where there's a real margin. And we also wanted to price .club so it's available to be in bundles. So we have a low wholesale price so that we are able to participate in hosting bundles or email bundles with hosting providers, right? If we had a very high wholesale price, it would be hard to work that into a bundle. So we thought that bundling is very important, again, because we're really focused on that usage. So I think in this audience, usage and pricing is also important from a registrar perspective.
Talking about pricing, actually, with the new gTLDs, a new pricing method was implemented. It took a while and a lot of discussion went on. So the tier pricing, that means a higher price in the beginning for the first year, and then with the renewal, possibly another pricing different from the first year, maybe higher, maybe lower, all kinds of stuff. What is your perspective on that kind of pricing? Registrar maybe first.
It's tough for us. When you give a customer a price in the first year, they kind of have that in their mindset. That's what it's going to be for the second year, third year, and so on. I'm going to build around that TLD, and that's what I'm going to go with. Now, a little bit would be okay, but there are some times when there's a big margin or the tier is too great, where the first year may be more affordable, and the second year or the third year becomes out of reach. And that's hard to explain to a customer. It's always tough to talk about pricing to a customer, and especially when you're talking about now you have to pay more for the same TLD that you've been having for a year or two. It's tough for us.
Is that, talking again about winners and losers, is that from your perspective a parameter or factor for success? Is that a difficult thing to translate into the audience, the consumer world?
So just quick
you're
on that.
all doing it, right?
Yeah,
All
so
of it.
No,
You're
no,
not.
we're
No.
not.
You learned. No.
so
Go ahead.
I think most registries are doing it, whoever's doing it, only for a small segment of their premium portfolio. So it's not an everyday customer that's buying, your name dot whatever and has that sort of expectation that, his price might increase the next year. It's for a set list of premium domain names that the registry set aside. And it's important, in fact, it's a requirement from ICANN that you publish the renewal price very, very clearly at the time of registration. So he might be buying it for X dollars, but he sees that this is a premium name which will renew at Y dollars. It has a benefit to offer the customer as well, because if he's buying a premium name, he would have to shell out tens of thousands of dollars in a traditional TLD to get that. Here he's getting to try that out at a much smaller price, maybe a few $100s. So he's getting a category killer, premium name in a new TLD, which he can try out at a very low entry price, right? And then the next year he can decide. But he does know in advance at the time of registration that the registration price is much lower than the renewal. So I think if it's done right, it actually offers a significant benefit to a customer who otherwise couldn't afford a really high premium domain.
Jeff?
Well, first of all, we don't do that kind of pricing. When .club launched, we're coming up on our 3rd anniversary, so we were pretty early in the process. And by design, we wanted to be mirrored.com. We wanted everything to be what people are already familiar with. So we have a low wholesale price, a low retail price, and our renewal is always the same, low renewal. And that's a low renewal price even for premium names. So if someone paid $140,000 for Wine.Club, their renewal is still going to be $10 or $15 a year. So it was very important for us to keep it simple and keep it the way people were familiar with. The challenge we have, as Sandeep pointed to, is it's important for it to be merchandised properly, but frankly, not every registrar does a good job of that. And there are instances, even we have instances, where we'll see a premium name of ours and it'll be listed as that price per year, when in fact it's not per year. It's just the first year and then it's a $10 renewal. So we're constantly monitoring that and working with the registrars who are mixed up. And I don't blame the registrars because they've got hundreds of domains and each one has a slightly different business model, so they're trying to manage that system. So it's definitely a challenge of communicating very clearly to the customer. But we've tried to keep it very straightforward and very simple with a low renewal price no matter what.
Yeah,
Michael, you just said you're not doing it.
Yeah, so one
is
of the
that
things,
because you learned from the others?
well, one of the things with being last in line is that we've had the opportunity to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're actually in the end of our sunrise period, which I think most people know what the sunrise period is, opportunity for trademark and brands to register their domains in advance of the general public. We're coming up on the end of that, and then we go into a 7-day EAP on April 18th, and then we have our GA on April 25th. But one of the things that we have learned is that we want to go back to the basics. We want to keep it simple. That includes our pricing model, and that includes our list of so-called premium domains. We're not going out the door with tens of thousands of premium domains. We have a very finite list of domains that we think are relevant for the environmental community. It's 3,500 names. So that's probably shocking for some other registries out here because it's quite small, but it's actually very relevant. We do have tiered premium pricing on those names, but it's a regular renewal rate, so similar to the .club model. Okay. And again, it's going to be going back to usage. We want these names out there. We want them available for the environmental community, and we want them used. And we want it to be very transparent, too, in what that pricing looks like.
Mm-hmm. Leanne, I mean, .shop is tier price as well. It's going up to 100,000 per year.
Yes.
Is that working for you?
It is working for us, and our model is a little bit different to others in that the premium price is both for the first year and also for the renewal. We have tried to keep it simple as well. We recognize that it's very complicated and there are a lot of different models out there. But in our first 6 months, we've already generated over $1 million of revenue from our premium names to our registrar partners. So we think that says that it's doing okay.
Cool. How difficult is it, what these guys just mentioned, and Leanne as well? How difficult is it to educate your customers and tell them clearly what they have to expect so that they're not running into an issue? Is your customer service team now busier than ever before?
I would say yes, and I am too, because what we have now is we have a special platform where you can register the premium domains separate from the regular platform, because customers need to know, okay, there's premium domains and there's regular domains. How are we going to determine which ones are premium, which ones are regular? So we have to take about all 500 or plus new TLDs that we have. We have to analyze it, see which ones offer premium pricing, automated through our system. And then we also have to see, okay, what's the tiered pricing? What are we going to offer the customer? Is it also for the renewal? We got to display all this information to the customer. And that's kind of tough because there are different models. I understand every company has a different model, but then when it comes down to us selling it, of course we're going to offer it because we want our customers to have the chance to get those premium domains. But it's also the problem of trying to educate them and say, hey, this is not the same as this other TLD that you bought with this premium domain. So.
Sandeep and Jeff, you both, I mean, Jeff especially, 3 years ago you started. You were one of the first, I think it was, I don't know, number 10 maybe?
It was more than that, but it was early in the process.
So March 2000 and...
May.
May? Okay.
Yeah, so May will be our third anniversary.
Have you had a clear strategy on how to be successful with your single string, or did it change over time?
In truth, it really hasn't changed much over time. I think we didn't anticipate how cluttered it would be and how complicated the retail channel would be, as Sandeep alluded to. I think we perhaps underestimated that. But generally speaking, I mean, we have the benefit of focus because we only have .club to think about. So with that in mind, I mean, we had a pretty clear understanding of where we saw the market for club, and that's, you know, carried through pretty well. We've had a few surprises here and there, more in the widespread usage. I mean, we always saw different verticals that club would appeal to, and we always understood that it was a global domain. Of course, no one anticipated China and what an impact China was going to have, especially in the second half of 2015, not just for us, but for, you know, the whole industry. So that certainly was not anticipated. You know, so it's been an interesting ride, but I think the disappointment, if there is any, that I think we all share is awareness is still relatively low. We still work very hard, you know, to market and build a brand and create demand for .club, as many other registries do. But overall, you know, it's a big world out there, and the people in the domain industry represent a very small percentage of the people who actually use domain names. And so, you know, getting that awareness out is happening, and it's happening slowly but surely, but I think it's happened a lot slower than most of us would have predicted 3 or 4 years ago when we were getting started.
Yeah. Leanne, did you have a strategy in place before you started, actually, or not?
Do we have I think we had a strategy in place. I mean, we've been able to learn from where, from many others ahead of us.
Talking about .eco, I assume actually your business case looks way more realistic than the many business cases that were launched in 13
it's
or
encouraging
14.
to hear that. So.
Is it? I mean, you're measuring your own success versus some numbers that you have in the spreadsheet.
I mean, we're a single applicant like Jeff was with .club. The two co-founders of .eco applied for it 8 years ago, which just sounds insane, right? That's a super long time to wait for one extension. It's finally here. They've had a lot of time to think about it. They've had a lot of time to build a business plan around it. I think for us, we do have the community support, and some of those community organizations have millions of members. I mean, WWF, right? Everybody knows them. I think they have over 3 million members. And we've got 50 organizations like that. So to the extent that we can engage them and partner with them and partner with registrars to leverage that relationship, I think will be extremely helpful. And to the extent that we can stay the course and not get distracted with a lot of noise that is taking place in this industry every single day. So we're looking forward to it.
I think one thing too that maybe has changed. I think in the early days, I think everyone thought, you know, people would switch their web address to a more meaningful or more relevant web address. And in reality, you know, switching a domain name is a big deal, and it's very hard to do. It can be done, and it can be done properly so that you don't lose any, you know, SEO rankings or anything like that. But it's still a big decision to make. And I think where we've seen the most growth overall for new TLDs is not in people getting a new domain name and switching, but rather people starting out anew and starting new businesses and people starting new ideas and looking for the best, most relevant domain name they can find for that new business. So I think, you know, the industry needs to focus more on that, on emerging markets where people are coming to the internet for the first time, on entrepreneurs and startups and small businesses, people who are creating something new and now have the opportunity to find a domain name that really does represent what their business is trying to be.
Yeah. I remember actually in 13 or 14 as well, probably, very many registries thought that marketing is not required, not by the registry. It will be done by the registrar. We know all that the time has changed, and very many, all of you actually, are doing marketing. Would you be doing more or collaborating better with the registrars if you could turn back time? What would you do different in terms of marketing? You're talking about education, about explaining it, the position of the TLD and the pricing.
Yeah, I think
so
you know the players that came in expecting the registrar to do the marketing for them probably didn't survive, I guess, or probably not doing very well either way, because it was a known fact that there are going to be hundreds of new extensions, right? So unless you have the best one that, you know, everyone believes is by far and ahead of everything else, which doesn't exist. I mean, there are a bunch of good TLDs, some not so good. And the registrar doesn't have the bandwidth to really, you know, focus on marketing a specific TLD, and they don't need to do that. Because there's already latent demand for existing TLDs out there. So it had to be baked into the business model and the expectation of the registry that you have to build a brand around your extension. and we're not the only ones with new TLDs. Since the legacy TLDs launched, there are a couple of CC TLDs that were rebranded as generic, and they succeeded, and they succeeded because they really built a brand around that TLD. They did not wait for the registrar to do that for them. That would be suicidal, I think. So I think that's something that most registries sort of did expect to do out the gate, to build a brand by themselves. And in some cases, you partner with registrar where your interests align. But it's something that you really have to expect to do on your own.
Yeah. I think a lot of people may not have realized that the domain industry is really a very traditional wholesale retail business, right? Just like many other products. And so in any of those businesses, the manufacturer, as the registry, we're essentially the manufacturer of our strings. And as the manufacturer, we have to build the brand. We have to create demand, create that pull. And yes, there's going to be marketing in the retail channel, just like if you walk into a Walmart or a store, you'll see end caps and you'll see various things promoting specific products. But that's in partnership with the manufacturers, and that's in addition to all of the other bigger, wider spread branding that manufacturer has to do. And we have to look at ourselves as the manufacturer and really create that brand.
I think the registrar perspective, maybe.
The registrar perspective. Well, at first we wanted to promote all these new TLDs because we thought it's a great opportunity.
Which was probably easy in the beginning when there was only 10, 15, and then they came all
Then they
out.
all came, and then everyone wanted to do promotions, and of course we wanted to be on board, and we wanted to help promote those TLDs because we saw a great opportunity to get those TLDs out to the customers. But as the business grows and as you learn, you kind of change your strategy to which best suits you, your business, and your customers. So for us, we had to kind of change where we're promoting the TLDs that are most relevant to our customers. Where before we did promote TLDs that maybe weren't the most relevant, but we really wanted to get the word out there. So now we've had to kind of change and fine-tune our strategy for our customers on how we can best give the customers the best choice on which TLD they want.
Yeah. I think that's an important point. Beyond the marketing that the registries and registrars will do together, it's going to be about relevancy.
Yep.
So if you go back a couple years when new TLDs were launched, it was, from a registrar perspective, it was, we have to get prepared for this. We have to be able to scale hundreds of new launches over a given month. I was on the registrar side, and I know how difficult of a process that was. Now that I think we're through that, the industry's through that, I think it should move towards relevancy and search relevancy. So that'll go a long ways, perhaps further than marketing dollars, so that if I'm looking for a domain that has environment in it, eco should show up. Or if somebody's looking for a domain that involves some type of social club, .club should show up. And that's where I think the industry should go with registrar. And there are a lot of search companies out there now that I think have improved that, and I'd like to see that continue.
Yeah, I think the whole industry wins when a customer finds the right domain name. And it doesn't matter what the right domain name is and what the extension is. If they perceive it as the right name and they get excited about it, then it helps the hosting industry. Then they're going to want to do something with it. They're going to want to build a website. They need hosting. They need email. They need everything else. So it's all about finding that domain name that they can connect with emotionally, that they get excited about. And the industry has the greatest chance ever to make that happen now because you have all these different choices and you have relevance to the right of the dot. So it's interesting, and people are doing clever things with names, and people are finding names. Both Sedo and Radix celebrated a great sale of casino.online. That's a name that has significant relevance, in search, in business, and everything else. So there's real value there, and I'm sure that the buyer of that name is very excited and very happy to have it. Just like when someone buys a new house, you get excited about it, and that's what we want. We want people to find domain names that they get excited about so that they build on them.
How much is time a really crucial factor? I mean, every business seeks to become profitable after 3 years according to business plan, and so on, maximum 5 years. We're now in the range of getting there. How much patience do you need to have for your TLD?
I mean, from our perspective, it's a longer time frame than that. I mean, we look at this as, once you acquire an asset, you have perpetual right to that. And we do also see the compounding effect as you acquire customers every year. So we have a longer term view of the business. And I think we're really just scratching the surface. Again, we didn't launch very early on. We just have, I think, one a few domains are across the first renewal. Some of them haven't yet. So we're really early in the stage as far as our business is concerned. But so far, I've been very encouraged by the results. Like we're outperforming what our projections were, on the basis of which we went into auction and acquired these TLDs. So we've gotten off to a better start than we expected. But we don't have a 3-year time frame to get profitable. It's longer than that. We understand the value of building a brand and creating demand for our extension. So yeah, I think we're looking more like 5 to 10 year time frame from our perspective.
5, 10 years. Is that the same time frame you have in mind?
I mean, certainly shorter than 10 years. We're in our 3rd year since launching in GA. We'll probably be cash flow break even this year. But we chose by design to invest very heavily in marketing, so we've put a lot of money back into the business to grow that brand, and that was by choice. We looked at it as a longer term piece. But there's 2 sides to this business as a registry from monetization. You've got one, and they're opposite things. One is a high volume, low margin, and that's your general availability registrations. For us, $10 or $15 a year. And then you have the opposite. You have low volume, high margin with the premium names. And we've done for just.club about a little under $5 million in premium names, since we launched. So that keeps the business going forward. But in the end, it's a subscription business. We want people to renew. So I think the success of any registry is getting to a registration base that you're happy with based on your overhead that renews consistently year after year, and then you have a nice business.
.shop is based in Japan. What is your most important market that you're in right now, or that you started to grow fastest, or?
We've actually, when we first launched, Germany was the most popular, was where we were seeing the most registrations from. Europe in general, the Netherlands, there's also been a lot of interest and usage as well. We launched a little bit later in China than some others did. We were there in January of this year, and China's quickly become a really important market for us as well. But what we really keep discovering that the word shop is understood in so many different languages and used, is associated with web e-commerce or web shopping in so many different places. So it's we're always discovering new markets.
What's your most important market, Jeff? Geography.
Well, I think, I would gauge our most important market not in terms of geography, but in terms of people who are starting businesses and can use a .club name. And we try to make .club accessible, even our premium names, to small businesses. So we recently launched financing for premium names, where we as the registry will offer 60-month interest-free financing on any premium name to make it more accessible for a business. So instead of writing a big check for a few $1,000s up front, they could be paying $20 a month, $33 a month for a $3,000 or $4,000 name, and then pay for it out of cash flow and really use that name and grow their business. So our biggest market are really people who can actually use a .club domain, and we want to help them do that any way we can.
What is your market going to be the most important?
Well, if we talk about geographies, the good thing about .eco is that it's global. It resonates in North America, South America, Europe, and Asia, Australia. We have some early adopters that have come out of Australia, as a matter of fact. Good on you .eco. It's a fashion website that's focusing on knowing what products go into particular clothing. We have early adopters in North America as well. But to echo Jeff's point, our market, we see huge opportunity in small and medium-sized businesses. In fact, that's probably one of the largest markets that we see as relevant to the .eco extension. So.
How about Radix? I mean, you have so many different TLDs.
Yeah.
It's probably different per TLD? Or?
Yeah, but I think for the most part, North America is, I think, our biggest market so far.
Yeah.
Also, that reflects in the overall domain name sales. Like, I think we've done some geographic analysis, not just for our TLDs, but for the entire industry. And US seems to be ranking on top as far as domain name sales globally are concerned across all TLDs. So it's I think, our #1 market as far as our focus is concerned. But not too far behind is China. I think China is bigger on volume, but obviously the average revenue per domain is much lower in China. And there are several other challenges that China comes along with, which you don't find in the US. It's far more open market to play in. So yeah, I think US would probably be our biggest market and most focused market at this point.
Jeff, you mentioned it earlier on. Casino.online was sold just 2 weeks ago, I think it was, for 200,000, a little more than that. Congratulations to Radix, by the way.
To you as well,
Thank
to
you.
Sedo who broke the name.
Fishing for compliments. Just for the audience, actually. We sold it as Sedo is the marketplace, of course, and we have a brokerage team. In this case, the brokerage team was very active and was able to manage this highest sell so far in the new gTLD space. How much important, I mean, talking back to success and becoming successful, how important is the premium part of your business? Jeff, you mentioned early on that you're doing quite a bit of sales in the premium sector.
Yep.
I don't know if you said of 500 you're holding back in a way.
Yep.
You have how many that you claim as premium?
In the Registrar channel, we have about 10,000, and then we have another 40,000 or so that we haven't released yet.
Okay. How important is it, and talking about the marketing and education, how difficult is it to tell the world that a domain name is 100,000 per year?
I think premium names are not our primary focus right now. We're interested in growing volume and usage, but we have premium names there, and I think we're going to think and learn from others and see how we're going to use them in the future. We want to have them available in the meantime, though.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's probably, Jeff and I haven't spoke about this, but it's probably similar to their model in terms of making sure that those premium names are available in the marketplace via the registrars at a reasonable price, and putting that money back, reinvesting it back into the registry to then market it. So it's going to be an important part. I mean, so much so that even our 2 characters, we're releasing our 2 characters at launch. We see no reason to hold those back, with the exception of some that ICANN has said you can't release. But you know, we want to get them out there. We want to get them out there at a reasonable price, and we want them to be used. So that'll help create that awareness.
Yeah, and premium names are an important part of our business. You know, we sell premium names through the Registrar channel in 9 price tiers. So from as low as, you know, roughly $75 or $80 for that first premium payment, and then standard renewal up to $10,000 in the Registrar channel. And we sell premium names in all those price ranges on a daily basis. And then at Get.Club, we offer the financing if that's of interest to people. But I think what's great about premium names in the new extension space is if you get a great keyword and you get an extension that makes sense with that keyword, it performs very well. So we see businesses using premium names for their business, and it performs very well in search. It performs very well in just their customers understanding what they do. So, you know, businesses like Coffee.Club and Soap.Club, and in Australia, Betting.Club, and they put big billboards up in Australia. And I mentioned Chaos earlier. That was a premium name. Gear.Club, one of the top racing games in the iTunes store. They had 1 million downloads in their first 5 days. They branded the game Gear.Club, and that was a premium name that they paid for. So there's a lot of opportunities for businesses to get a big push by using a great domain name, oftentimes a premium name.
How difficult is that for the registrar? Because, I mean, very many of those premium names are not visible or accessible through the registrar front end.
Right, and premium domains are interesting because some of them are, and we can get the data and we can tell the customer how much it's going to cost. Some of them aren't available. We have to go to the registry and kind of ask, you know, what kind of pricing is this going to cost? But, you know, I think actually from learning with the registrar side, premium domains has been the biggest change or biggest success that we've seen come out of it, something we didn't expect.
So you're participating in that part?
We are, yes.
Okay.
The premium domains.
We're not talking about the tier price, it's more the one-time high price like the Casino.online. You're participating in this as well?
Also the one time?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay. If you had an advice for other TLDs, what would be the single advice to do different? I mean, .eco hasn't started or launched yet. I mean, it's pretty soon, but probably have a plan in place already. But you could alter it if there's a good advice here.
I'm listening.
So I think the one thing that I can share is the fact that it's very important to be flexible with your business model. You know, with every channel partner, I think it's a relationship that has to be developed. You have to keep in mind their specific limitations in devising a partnership with each one of them. So I think it's really important to sort of keep that in mind, because traditionally, gTLD operators operated very, very differently, right? Because there are only so many of them that every registrar would have to sort of make sure that they are accommodating to the rules and policies of the TLD, right? It could be marketing policies, it could be various other things. But when the registrar has umpteen number of options, he's going to try and choose the one that suits his expectations and suits his market requirement the best. So you really have to sort of mold yourself into meeting the registrar's model as opposed to sort of imposing your model down to registrars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
After
I would
6
say
months.
after 6 months, something that keeps coming up is just to keep it simple. I think right through the launch process, the pricing, the premium pricing, the messaging, I think always something that we realize is simpler, is better.
Absolutely. From a registrar perspective, it's definitely keep it simple and don't make too drastic of changes in your business model, halfway or a couple years down the road, because now.
You mentioned flexibility. No, you mentioned flexibility.
Yeah.
You mentioned not too drastic changes. We
Right,
just heard about a very drastic change of one of the registries, a bigger
Yes.
one, for a couple of TLDs. What do you think about that? Is that, in this case, his way of securing success, talking about the success again, is that his way of doing it?
Every registry is a business, and every business has its own, business model and its own measures of success. And because every registry is very different, and every domain, not all domains are created equal. They all have a different market. There's very different ways to approach a purely generic domain than something that has a specific meaning or appeals to a very niche. You could have a very niche extension that could be very successful if there's not a big overhead and it reaches that niche market that it appeals to. People made fun of .horse when it came out, but in reality, there's a huge equine community. If they can market .horse effectively to that equine community, they could probably have a very successful business around .horse. So I think, the pricing issues that you reference, I think the way it was communicated and things like that, I think caused a lot of confusion. But I think if a registry has to understand in terms of advice who the audience is for their specific extension, or in your case, extensions, each one has a different audience. And if you understand who that audience is, you need to then convey that to your registrar partners, to the channel, so that they can convey it to the customers. To just try to stick out in the midst of hundreds of domains like the generics used to do when there were only 22 of them is really hard to do. On the other hand, if you know your market and can appeal to that market, then you can stand out, not to everyone, but to that market, and you can build a very successful business around that market.
Maybe short explanation, actually. There's one registry that announced a very drastic price increase, wholesale price increase by 300%, and then the retail price even more than that. So that will happen, I don't know, half a year from now, I think it is. So that's a drastic change. Have you thought about the pricing that will stay stable over the lifetime of .eco?
Yeah,
Or are you going to be flexible to adjust?
No, we've absolutely thought about that. As a former employee of the company that you're referencing, I'll recuse myself from answering that question. But no, you don't want, from our perspective anyway, we don't want any surprises. Again, we want to be transparent and create that trust and transparency that goes with the extension, and that requires that we are trustworthy and transparent in the way we operate and as a business. So we're not expecting, and we don't anticipate, it's nowhere in our business plan to do what you're referencing. But I do want to go back to the messaging that Cruz mentioned, because I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we at .eco are going to face. If there's one thing that you can take away from this session is that you might not have known at the beginning who our audience was, and that we're not just for the nonprofit environmental community, but we're also for businesses, products, individuals. So essentially, if there's one thing about the .eco community is that we want it to grow, and that'll be another KPI for us. Does that community grow? Because at the end of the day, probably most people in this room have some type of environmental commitment or want something positive to happen to our planet. So for our case, from our perspective, we just need to make sure that we can get that message out to the registrars so that the registrars can communicate that effectively.
We're getting closer to the end, and I have a couple of sentences that I would like to, each of you actually, to finish with one word or short sentence, short explanation. I love the marketing campaign of, you name a TLD, and why? Not yours.
Not yours.
Leanne, you want to start?
We always enjoy the marketing that Radix does. I think that that their TLDs are really, we've done some really creative stuff. Of course, as .shop, we're always watching .store and always impressed with
Likewise.
what they do.
You can be sure.
Yeah.
I would say
You're independent here, that's good.
I'm independent. That is good, and I have been impressed with the .club registry and how they have marketed their use cases to the customers, giving a good price point, having a good price tier or price angle for premium domains. I like the angles that they've been doing, and yeah, it's been good.
Sandeep.
Yeah, I think .club as well. I think they've done a really good job in sort of building a brand around their extension, showcasing some of their top users. So absolutely admire the work that they do.
Well, not thank you.
Could
but
name yourself.
Not to keep it on the panel, although I think the panel is a good representation of people doing really good work. I think that Radix has done a really great job of marketing partnerships. They've done some very strong partnerships that were really relevant to the domain name. So getting things like the CES to use .tech and things like that, I think were really great, smart moves, and it gets the name out in front of the right audience and being used in a logical way. So I admire that very much.
Yeah, I would agree with that. With Radix, I think has done a very good job along the social marketing as well.
If you could turn
And then
back
there are others that are not on this panel who
yeah.
are doing a good
Well, you
job.
could
too.
name
So I
them.
mean, it's not
well, it's to be honest, credits to Club. I mean, you're amongst these here, the first one who launched, and from the beginning you had a marketing strategy in place and spent money on it because you understood that marketing is crucial. That's very good. If you could turn back time and you had the possibility again to apply for a string, not the one that you own right now, which one would you apply for? Who's starting?
Well, we would have applied for .shop. Looking back, we always liked shop is a strong extension. We like shop a lot. I think but I think I'm glad we didn't, because then Leanne wouldn't be here. But also because I think one of the reasons why we've had a little bit of success over this time is the focus we had on just one string. So I'm happy that we didn't have multiple strings to think about.
Actually, like .cloud. I think
Cloud?
Yeah.
Or Club?
Cloud. Yeah, I think Francesco did a really good job early on with getting some champions on board and getting some visibility. That would be one that I probably would have applied for.
Sandeep. I mean, you have lots of them, but
It's going to be,
maybe
it's
there's
easy.
one not.
We applied for 31, right? And we spent months sort of going through all dictionary words to figure out which ones to do. We put a lot of effort into it, but somehow .club was missed out. I think in hindsight, again, it's probably easy to choose because they done a good job with it, but still it's 4 characters, it resonates globally. I think, we didn't quite see the value that we see now. So it's a mixture of both what they've done with it, but also I think the term itself has great promise.
Leanne.
I think .app was one that when we saw that, we thought that would have been a good one. We looked forward to.
Would you
see what
apply
they
for
do.
one?
I would definitely apply for one if I had the upfront
Which one?
money. I do like .shop. I do like that it's a strong TLD around the world. It's easy for people to understand.
Talking about application, and now really short, please. A next round of new gTLD applications is
2020.
Going to happen.
no, not the timing. Is how do you look at it? How do you consider a next round?
I think unnecessary before 2019.
Okay.
I want to launch .eco.
Complicated.
Better be a smaller amount of TLDs.
Will be a lot about brands and geos, I think.
Okay. If you could change one single thing without any hurdles to overcome with your string or your strings, what would it be? Just one thing. strategy, marketing, pricing, collaboration, staff, partners, nothing?
Nothing.
I would focus, brands are very important. We didn't talk much about brands at all, but obviously brands are an important part of this business. There's over 600 .brand applications. Some brands are starting slowly but surely to use their names, and brands are good end users for us. For .club, every brand has a loyalty or reward program they could use .club for. Some are like Swatch, the watch company uses Swatch.club. But I think, if I could change something, I would have put more effort into brands earlier, because it takes a long time to get them to turn around. And I would like to have seen more brands actively using not just our extension, but others today.
And now one last question, prediction until end of last year. Say the number of registrations you have and what you're expecting it to be until end of 2018. Leanne.
2018,
Yeah.
next year. 175,000 now, and 750,000 by then.
Nice. You want to?
I think maybe I could say about the whole market
Yes.
itself, I think it will grow by about 50%. From what numbers-
50%?
Yeah, 50%.
Okay, that's good.
We're about 2.5 million across our new domains. I think it'd be about 3.5 by 2018.
1 million more.
Yeah.
Jeff?
We're at 850,000 now, and by what date?
End of next year. not
End
last
of
year.
next year. I think probably somewhere around 1.5 million or a little thereabouts. I think our goal is not to get to 10 million domains. Our goal is to get to a strong,
So you would
solid
double
base.
in that time frame.
What? Yeah, maybe a little bit less. Maybe 1.4.
We have 30 right now, early adopters, and
Yeah.
if we can get to 50,000 by the end of 2018, I think we'll be good. And I know he's ready.
Yeah, Tobias,
Yeah, thank you very
thank
much.
you very much for
you.
a wonderful panel full of very informative things. So, really big round of applause for Tobias and his panel. Thank you so much for giving us time today. Really
Thank you very
appreciate your
much.
effort.